Hi, I'm Christopher Walker with Closely Observed English. I'm here near the cathedral in Bielsko-Biała, a nice, peaceful, quiet place to talk about today's topic, which is stress! Stress affects us all, and it affects us in different ways. Some people quite like feeling a little bit of stress. Some people find that it really stops them from performing. They can't do the work they want to do. In this video, I'm going to look at 5 ways that you can reduce the stress you feel when you take an English language exam, like the Cambridge B2 First or First for Schools, or the C1 Advanced. The first tip I have is that before you do the exam, try to get some timed practice of the exam. Now what I mean by that is that you probably do a lot of practice tests to improve your exam skills, but you should sit down and do a whole exam in timed conditions. So why is that so important for reducing stress? Well, let's take the C1 Advanced as our example. The Reading and Use of English paper has 8 parts. 4 are kind of use of English. Well, the first one's reading, but they look like use of English. And 4 are reading tasks. There's a lot of reading to do. You have 90 minutes to do all of that. Now, if you haven't done timed practice, you won't know how long it takes you to do each part. And then you might start struggling for time. You might find that the examiner is saying 5 minutes to go and you've only just started part 8. Now that would be stressful. So doing timed practice, maybe a mock exam, or just shutting yourself up in a room with a clock and a practice test will help you to get a better feel for how long each part of the test takes you. Tip number 2 is something that you need to start doing a couple of weeks or months before the exam itself, and that's to start making what I call a personal dictionary. When you explore the English language, you meet a lot of words and phrases. Some of these will be useful and some of these will be less useful. Some of them will become personal favourites. These will be words that you like to use and that you use often because they're connected to something you like, maybe a hobby or interest, or just because the word itself is pretty cool. Keeping a personal dictionary, which is a small, maybe a couple of pages in your book or maybe a little diary that you put things into, keeping a personal dictionary means that a couple of days before the exam, you can go through your list and choose 5 or 6 words that you really want to use in the exam and that you decide you're going to use. So whether it's the speaking paper or the writing paper, you will go into the exam ready to work those words into what you do. And it will help reduce your stress because before the exam even starts, you already know something about what you want to say or what you want to write. Tip number 3 is something that you can do on the night before the exam, or a few nights before, or several times before the exam. When you go into the exam, a lot of the questions will be connected in some way to your world knowledge. It will be about the world around you, especially at B2 First level. So spending some time thinking about the world around you, about the environment, for example, about the animals you see, about the places where people choose to make their homes. Thinking about that, even if it's not in English, will help prepare you mentally for the sort of topics you're going to see. Before the speaking paper, it's a really good idea to think a bit about yourself and your life experiences. What are your hobbies and how would you tell somebody you don't know about them? Where did you go for your last holiday? What did you do on your last birthday? Even if you're not thinking about these things in English, you will be thinking about them So when you go into the speaking exam, you'll be ready to answer these personal questions in the first part of that paper, which is the icebreaker. Now, the icebreaker might not seem like a big part of the exam, but it's an example of what we say of putting your best foot forward. If you start well, you'll feel more confident, you'll feel less stressed, and you'll be able to make a much more successful go of the speaking paper. My fourth tip to reduce stress and anxiety in the exam is to remember that the exam is designed to give you a chance to demonstrate your English. It's not a negative exam. I've seen negative exams and I think that they're unfair. If you get an answer wrong, you lose points in a negative exam. Cambridge exams are positive exams. You only get points when you're right and you can't really lose points. So keep that in mind. Take a chance if you're not sure about something. Don't worry too much about getting the wrong answer if you don't know what the answer should be, and concentrate more on the little successes that you have as you go through the test. That will help bring down your stress levels. I can tell you now, it works. And finally, that brings us to point number 5. Now, this might seem like a bit of a trick, almost as if I wanted a kind of clickbait top 5 tips. But point 5 is basically accept that there will be stress in the exam. Embrace it. Own your stress. Make it work for you. If you don't feel stress in an exam, you might not be motivated enough to check your answers, to make sure that you're right. You might become overconfident, and that is a problem. It happened to me recently. I went to a pub quiz with some of the other teachers and I was having a great time. I didn't feel any stress. So when I filled in one of the rounds and I thought I had everything right, I didn't stop to ask if I was sure. I simply handed in the paper, sat back, took a sip of my non-alcoholic beverage and waited for the results to come back. And when I found out I'd made a simple mistake that I shouldn't have made at all, I was humiliated, really. The other teachers looked at me. "Chris, how could you get that one wrong? It's crazy." Well, it's because I hadn't been stressed enough to actually care whether I got it right or wrong, deep down. So I think that's a legitimate point. When you go into the exam, you will feel stress. Use that stress to make you a better exam participant, so you get a better result. But make sure the stress doesn't get the better of you. So that's where you need to follow those other 4 points. Have you got your own technique for reducing the stress you feel in exams? Leave a comment below. Share it with us. Maybe you've got a great idea that we would all benefit from. If you liked this video, please think about liking it and subscribe to the channel. If you really liked it, consider buying me a coffee. There's a link in the description below. It's only a couple of euros, but it really does help. If you're an independent student looking to build your word power, think about getting a copy of my book, 66 Lessons for Autodidacts. An autodidact is a student like yourself who studies by themselves. They build their language independently, not always with the help of a teacher. So those are my ideas for you. If you've got any other questions that you'd like to ask me about learning English, studying English and taking English exams, have a look for me on social media and get in touch. I'd be very happy to make a video for you. So until next time, bye bye.